Senator King.
Well, following up on this point, it seems to me the tension here is, I don't want the U.S. government to be the truth police. If you start talking about what's true and what's not true in political advertising, you know, you could have 1,000 people doing that full-time, 24 hours a day. That's not the job of the U.S. government. It strikes me that the role you can play, however, is disclosure of sources. That if you know through your intelligence sources and your attribution that a particular piece of information, true or not, is coming from a foreign source, that's the role where it's important for you to notify the public so they know the source, not whether it's true or not, because I just think that's an impossible determination. But at least people should know the source. In a main town meeting, when somebody stands up to talk, you assess not only what they say, but who they are, and you're not allowed to wear a bag over your head in a main town meeting. And so that's where I think you have an important role to play. And the thing that bothers me and worries me, you use the word notification framework. I've seen that. It's a bureaucratic nightmare. A notification that comes in February after a November election ain't any good. And what I want to urge is disclosure of sources when you're aware of it immediately. Immediately. Mark Twain said it, you know, it takes good news, bad news gets around the world before good news gets its shoes tied. So I hope that you can go back and look at this process and not make it bureaucratic, but if you have evidence that this is coming from a foreign source, let the public know so they can assess that. Is that something you can take back?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is something that we do, is try to attribute where information is coming from, essentially, and working through the methodologies on that. And I realize notification framework may sound quite bureaucratic, but it really is a living thing. And for example, they have worked through a process where they can expedite their decision-making process through within 48 hours. They can, looking at
That should
even
be the
making
standard.
that smaller.
48 hours should be the
across
outside.
the board. Yeah, it's not much longer than that in
Because
terms
having
of the
this
standard.
information that it's foreign sourced within the U.S. government doesn't do us any good if the election is 5 days away and you don't get that information
Yeah,
out
absolutely.
to the public.
Agreed.
Because what's going on here is our adversaries are using our strength against us. It's a kind of geopolitical jujitsu. The strength of our society is its openness, the First Amendment, freedom of expression. They're using that in order to manipulate our most fundamental sacred right, which is the right of an election. And so we've got to be alert to it. And as I say, I disagree with my colleague. I don't think you're in the truth or falsehood business. I think you're in the disclosure of intelligence business. And I hope that that's something you can continue. Now, at CISA, I'm worried that you may be overly concerned with appearing partisan and that will freeze you in terms of taking the actions that are necessary. You gave a very impressive list of all the meetings and things that you're doing, but I'm hearing from some election officials that they don't feel that CISA is out there with them. They're not getting the support that they need. So I hope that you're being very forward-leaning about the work that the protection you can provide to state and local election officials.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Actually, as I mentioned, we are providing more services in more jurisdictions than ever before. We've actually enhanced our field force of cybersecurity advisors, physical security advisors, and then election security advisors who are former secretaries of state or state election directors who are working hand in hand with secretaries of state and current state election directors. And I am in touch with chief election officials across the country, to include Secretary of State Bellows and others, to ensure that they are getting everything that they need to run safe and secure elections. And that's not been affected in any of a partisan way.
Please ramp it up. We've got about 6 months, and this is we know that these adversaries are going to be coming at us. Final question. We know that in 2016, and I believe in 2018, the Russians got into something like 35 states' election infrastructure. They didn't do anything with it. There was no effort to manipulate voting lists, but they weren't doing it for fun. I'm worried that they're still there, and that the potential for example, people walking into a polling place in Miami and finding their name has disappeared off the list, the potential for chaos is very high. So I hope all of you are pursuing those, I call them sleeper cells, that may still be there in state election infrastructure?
I'll just comment that since we have designated election infrastructure as critical, there's been enormous progress, in particular in raising the bar on cybersecurity. So as you know, not all of voting equipment, vote tabulation and vote casting is not connected to the internet, just vote registration and election night reporting. So that the fact that it's disconnected, it's not exposed to the internet, that's a layer of security. But there are also multiple layers. Election officials take a defense in depth approach, technological layers, physical layers, procedural controls to ensure that that election infrastructure is secure and resilient. The other thing that's important to remember, Senator, is that we have so much diversity across our election infrastructure. If you've seen one state,
It's a benefit.
it's a benefit. If you've seen one state's election, you've seen one state's election. And so the virtue is there are procedures and controls under the chief election officials that makes that election equipment secure. And having worked with folks like Secretary of State McCrane in Idaho, I know that all election officials are focused laser-like on this, and they don't see elections security as a partisan political issue. They see it as an issue of ensuring that they can enable every one of their citizens' votes to be counted as cast.
Final quick question. Director Haines, did you hear about the 3 conspiracy theorists that walked into a bar?
No.
It
No.
wasn't a coincidence.
That's great. Thank you.